Welcome and thanks for joining the Society for Clinical Research Sites for SCRS Talks. My name is Mike J. I'm the Director of Special Projects. And SCRS Talks allows our global impact partners to take a few minutes to address issues of industry concern. In today's installment, we're going to have Amanda Rangel from VirTrial answer a few questions about decentralized trials in the post-COVID-19 world. And before we get started, hi, Amanda. How are you doing?
Hi, Mike. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Before we start into the questions, why don't you let everybody know what you and VirTrial have been up to lately?
Definitely. So as an introduction to myself, my name is Amanda Rangel, and I'm the SVP of Business Development at VirTrial. And VirTrial itself is, a telemedicine company specifically targeting the clinical research industry. And through our very robust telemedicine platform, we're enabling a lot of different virtual services. So mostly allowing patients to connect with sites remotely, but also using telemedicine to enable CRAs or site monitors to connect with sites remotely in a zero-touch environment. And so we, with the onslaught of COVID, are definitely very busy and excited to have a solution that can help meet the needs of the widespread industry.
Yes, and VirTrial, I'll mention this again at the closing, but VirTrial developed the virtual trials training that we offer to sites, which I'll mention again at the close of the presentation. So thanks a lot for working with us on that. So, well, let's just get right into it. Let us know how COVID-19 has shaped the future of decentralized trials, and considering the proactive stance that you all are taking towards it.
Yeah, I'm really glad actually that you led with this important question, Mike, because since the onset of COVID, we've seen companies react very quickly to ensure patients remain safe and to minimize the risk of study disruption. And I think what's really been brought to light here are three key industry needs during this pandemic, all with the underlying theme of zero-touch visit capabilities. So the first key need being recruitment. How can we enable zero-touch identification and qualification of study participants? And the second being remote patient visits. So how are we enabling zero-touch virtual visits between patients and their research site when they can't meet in person? And then the third key industry need are virtual site monitoring visits. So how are we enabling zero-touch site visits so that clinical research associates or CRAs can continue their monitoring activities while sites are closed to on-site visits? And so with this realization and really subsequent reaction to meet these needs, technologies that have been available to enable remote site visits, such as telemedicine, they were once before considered to be nice to have options, but overall a risk to a trial. And now they're viewed as essential and the exact risk mitigation strategy to keep patients safe and minimize study disruption during the pandemic. So to your original question, will the industry take more of a proactive stance to DCTs? In our opinion, and I think the opinion of all, the answer is yes, it must. Even the FDA commissioner has vowed to permanently adopt COVID-19-driven changes that make reviews and authorizations faster. And so I want to take a step back from that high-level answer and say, taking into consideration that we are on an SCRS podcast and that both SCRS and VirTrial are advocates for sites to have a voice and a say in what the future of DCTs look like, I would be remiss to not bring in some of the feedback we're hearing from our work with sites on this podcast. And so I'd like to give a thank you to Kay Scroggins at Clinical Trials of Texas, as well as Jason Roth at Platinum Research Network for providing some insights into what we're going to cover on this topic. And first, they offer that because of COVID, sites really have come to realize that decentralized trials or virtual trials can be accomplished. However, without a central location, being a site where the visit is typically conducted, other issues really come to the forefront. And two examples that we've encountered are regulatory obstacles. So while some of these rules have been loosened, there are quite a lot of incongruencies across sponsors and even within sponsors as to what is and is not allowed. Also, a challenge has been the logistics of conducting procedures in a decentralized trial. The sites themselves want to continue to see their patients and are already trained on the protocols. They work with the PI and are skilled at conducting studies. So instead of replacing that relationship with home health, why can't sites do that themselves and continue to see their own patients? Some sites have been so creative that they're conducting visits via telemedicine on the patient's phone, and the patient's sitting in the car at sites' parking lots, but they're still making sure that patient safety is at the forefront and that they're complying with the clinical trial protocol. So they've certainly stepped up, and they being the sites, to be creative. And we are very proud at VirTrial to have partnered with the sites in this initiative, really taking a grassroots approach to enable them to continue treating and seeing patients on their studies.
Yeah, and we were just I don't know if I want to use the word fortunate, though that is a correct word to use to be that the society worked with VirTrial early last year to really push this and say this is an issue that is well, it was an issue then, and it was very important. And then at the beginning of the year, it just went right to the top. And and VirTrial and the society were very prescient, I think, in advocating for this approach to conducting study visits.
Correct.
So, what do you think will happen to trials at the site level as we look to begin assessing positives and negatives of COVID and their effect on trials?
Another great question. In general, COVID has certainly opened our eyes as it has essentially smashed the clinical trial space into pieces. And at the site level, we're starting to see their creative adoption of technology solutions such as VirTrial, e-consent, and others. And that's really beginning to pick up the pieces and put it back together stronger than ever. And, unfortunately on the negatives, which there are many sites have had to do layoffs. And so being able to quickly ramp up again as we begin to open up can be a real struggle for them. Some sites are asking sponsors for help with this through paid site support services, for example, to assist them with scheduling, patient recruitment, or even things like hands-on services such as phlebotomy or assessments. And then there also continues to be a concern over safety of staff and patients. And decentralized trials can be conducted without patients coming into the clinic, but as noted before, it brings rise to other issues that have to be solved in regards to proper patient ID, drug shipment, required protocol amendments, and identification of additional vendors to support their protocol procedures. So, those are some of the negatives that will need to be addressed, but on the positive, we've seen more. On the positive side, we are, after all, at a golden age of advancement in telemedicine and having access to tools that weren't available before. And this will really enable sites to not only function, but thrive during a pandemic. And a direct quote from Kay at Clinical Trials of Texas, again, thank you, but she says the pandemic has pushed sites to adopt new technologies and new processes. And for us, this has been positive in that we have made these changes with happier hearts and less pushback from their pharma partners. And sites can use virtual or decentralized visits to broaden their catchment area for recruitment and thereby improving enrollment in studies. So it also addresses, the continued issue of diversity. It allows sites to bring in a more wide area, whether geography or different diverse and ethnic populations into their trials. Another example of a positive outcome for sites is a new concept of virtual site monitoring, and this is something a new offering from VirTrial in applying our robust telemedicine technology. And the concept of virtual site monitoring is without sending a clinical research associate, flying them to a clinic, having them meet in person, flying them back, waiting days for a report. Instead, we've coupled our technology with a proprietary pair of glasses that can be sent to the site. And when the coordinator or the physician puts those glasses on, the entire site visit can be streamed back to the CRA's computer. And what this alleviates is a major concern for sites. It gives them the flexibility to limit the number of people visiting their site from other states and countries. And it also helps them move more quickly through the backlog of monitoring visits that may have built up over the past few months while their site's been closed.
Does this new product you're talking about, does it have you named it? Does it have a catchy name?
We have named it. It's now called Virtual Presite, and we actually started with the concept that this could be a solution to the very long and costly startup timelines associated with site selection and qualification during trials. And so we named it Virtual Presite, saying, why not do all pre-study visits through this technology and significantly reduce the time and cost of sending clinical research associates to sites over and over. And so it's actually caught on like wildfire, but not necessarily just for the pre-study visit application. Industry has given us about 10 use cases now that it can go beyond study startup into interim monitoring visits, into closeout visits, even really neat applications such as pediatric home health, which the home health nurse can wear these glasses and the physician can watch the technique of that nurse, for example, measuring the head circumference and get a comfortability that is going to be consistent across the study. So very, very exciting, and industry's given us a lot to run with this application.
So what does the future of clinical trials look like because of this, and how can sites be prepared? What should they do? Is there are there some things they should be doing now and then considering later? What should sites be doing next?
Yes. So what do we see as the future of trials? I mean, we heard from industry leaders even before COVID-19 hit globally that there was likely a tsunami of DCTs or decentralized clinical trials on the horizon. And we heard just that word, that a tsunami is coming. And so to add to that, there is currently an immediate need for a cure or a vaccine for COVID, and that has even more accelerated adoption and awareness at an exponential rate. And this has also shown a positive light on clinical trials in general. So from a site perspective, to prepare for this surge, there are a number of resources that VirTrial has made available to help. One, we do urge sites to read recent guidance from the FDA and other regulatory agencies to become familiar with current recommendations, as well as complete VirTrial. As you mentioned in the beginning, we do have a virtual trial capable training. And this is a quick training and a certificate program that will enable sites to become virtual trial capable. And it really is to help them become familiar with telemedicine best working practices, essentially giving their staff legs to stand on in the fundamentals of how to simply conduct a virtual visit. This is a significant shift and leap that we're asking sites to take in moving beyond the four walls of their physical clinic. And, just like the painstaking EDC process and adoption in the past, sites are competent now in EDC, in things like e-diaries, but we're taking this to the next level by asking them to conduct decentralized clinical trials. So VirTrial's positioning and the reason we partnered with SCRS and other organizations like ACRP is to give them just the fundamentals. So what is good webside manner as opposed to bedside manner? And there's a lot to go along with that. Are you dressed professionally? Do you have appropriate camera and audio? And can you recreate that in-person feeling with your patient so that they're just as comfortable in a virtual environment as they would be in person. And so this is what we're offering. Sites can find the training through the SCRS website, on ACRP, as well as on VirTrial's website. But this is a significant and very brief training that they will get a badge, a certificate that they can market to sponsors about their willingness and capability to conduct these trials. And again, I would be remiss to not bring in some feedback from our friends. Jason Roth and his team at Platinum Research Network, they have actually embraced this philosophy. They've embraced various technologies at their sites in order to optimize management of their trials. And this includes e-regulatory, e-source, telemedicine, CTMS platforms. And really, again, it's a raise of the hand to say, I am ready for this industry. You really just need to bring me a protocol that I can execute that has decentralized clinical trial components. So as you can see, sites are ready or they're getting ready. They understand it. They want to keep their viability in the upcoming virtual world, and they're raising their hands. So now what's required really is a collaboration across all key stakeholders in the industry, sites, sponsors, CROs, and even technology vendors. And really only together and through collaboration are we going to completely shift the paradigm of how clinical trials are delivered.
So if sites are ready, do you have any experience or have you done any research on what percentage of sponsors and CROs, what percentage of their portfolios are considering decentralized aspects of clinical trials?
Well, I am so glad you asked that question, Mike, because you know it's like the $1,000,000 question of what is actually being done now because of this, pandemic and this shift. And it's really a great follow-up question to the point I just made about requiring industry collaboration. We've been talking about decentralized trials and their benefits for years now, yet we continue to only see small pilots and really mostly an attempt to conduct completely siteless trials up to this point. And to me and the VirTrial team, it really makes most sense to simply try to walk before we run and implement decentralized clinical trials with the puzzle pieces we already have at our fingertips. So why try to get rid of sites when they are raising their hands willingly to conduct these trials and they already know and have the expertise to run clinical trials? So let's give sites a hybrid model, allowing patients to choose how and where they participate in clinical trials under the supervision of their already trusted physician. So to answer your question, I can't really speak on behalf of CROs and sponsors and what percentage of their portfolios are considering decentralized aspects, but I can say that the sites we're working with tell us that less than 5% of the trials they are offered have any decentralized trial aspect. So my question is, when is industry really willing to finally rip off the Band-Aid and go for it? We already know patient-centric trials have numerous benefits, such as better enrollment, better compliance, better retention, and even better drug approval rates. So if those reasons haven't been or are not good enough, then certainly everyone can recognize now in the face of COVID that it's in the best interest to, whenever and wherever possible, have some type of decentralized clinical trial component in trials, in every protocol, to prevent something like this from bringing clinical trials industry to a standstill ever again.
Wow. Well, Amanda, thanks very much for that great report. Before we close out, how can people listening to this podcast find out more? Where can they go? A website? What's the best way for them to find out more about this?
Yeah, so we will put this podcast up on the VirTrial website. It's virtrial.com. And then also I would imagine that Mike will have this available on the SCRS website as well.
Yep, virtrial.com, everybody. Before we close out, Amanda, good to chat with you. And as much as I am intrigued by the virtual visit thing, would sure love to see you and your crew in person again soon in the future.
Yes, technology will never replace that human element, will it?
No, and I haven't seen you all in quite some time, but would look forward to seeing you all again.
Yes, really looking forward to October, and hopefully the summit continues on. It'll be great to see everybody's faces.
Sure would. All right, well, before we close out, don't forget VirTrial.com, and while we're talking about websites, myscrs.org. You can go there and register for upcoming webinars and other discussions. You can just go to the Learning Campus, see all the upcoming education there. And you can also see the SCRS Insight Journal. We publish that quarterly for members, and that's in the members only section, not members only section, the members section of myscrs.org. We appreciate everyone's participation in the SCRS Talks initiative, and today's program has been recorded and will be available shortly. And we look forward to having everyone join us for more great content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and thanks again, Amanda.
Thank you, Mike. It was my pleasure to be here.